Hi everyone! So today we're going to be talking about toxic house plants and how toxic are they and what do you need to do? Should you throw all your plants away because they're toxic to your pets, or are there ways that you can learn to live with them and your pets, obviously? So I have a bunch of notes here today. We're going to go over, I think I have about 10 plants listed here, and some common toxic elements that are in a lot of houseplants that we keep in our homes. I got the majority of this information from the ASPCA website, and where I needed to get a little more detail, I did a general Google search and I filled in some blanks that I had when I was doing my research on this. The majority of the research I found showed that the things that I'm talking about were very toxic to dogs. Some of them are toxic to cats. I don't know why I didn't make a note of like what's toxic to dogs, what's toxic to cats, but I think everything that I actually talk about in this video is toxic to both. But always do your own research when you're bringing a new plant into your home, especially if you're going to be keeping it somewhere where your pets can easily reach it, like a floor plant or something, like a tall tree or something like that where you really can't keep them away from it, because you just might not want that plant at all because it could be dangerous to them. Oh, and I'd also just like to say, this is not a comprehensive list. It would take me weeks to make a comprehensive list. The video would be well over an hour long if I was going to make you a list of every plant that is toxic to your pets. And so that's just not feasible. So please always do your research when you're bringing in a new plant to your home. That's the most important thing here. The majority of plants are not very toxic or not toxic at all. Before we get into it, please make sure you give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos about plants and just living with plants, living our best life with plants. So let's get into it. So the first plant I want to talk to you about today is the sago palm, which is really what inspired me to make this video, because I think that not a lot of people realize how toxic houseplants could be. And you might have seen this on Facebook going around. It was a little story that someone had written that they didn't know. They didn't know that their sago palm was toxic. Their dog got into it. The dog died within like 6 hours, something like a very, very quick amount of time from the dog eating some of it to passing, which is very sad. So I was like, you know what, I think that we need to talk more about this so that more people are aware of, how dangerous some of these plants could be. So the sago palm's main toxin is called cyasin. I'm going to put it up on the screen so you could look into it more. It's extremely toxic. That toxin is through the entirety of the plant, but the most concentrated part where that toxin is in the seeds. So if your dog takes a bite of the leaf, it would be much less of that toxin than if they ate some of your seeds that went to, your flower that turned to seed. That would be significantly more dangerous. You also need to consider the size of an animal when it is taking a bite of your plant. Something like a 10-pound dog eating 2 seeds is going to be extremely more affected than an 80-pound dog eating the same amount, because, there's just less room in the body for these toxins to spread out. So what this toxic element does is it attacks the liver. And this you can start seeing these symptoms from 15 minutes after the eating to hours later. And then there could also be a significant amount of blood loss, because this toxin messes with the body's ability to clot the blood properly. So the blood's going to be thinner, it's not going to be able to clot as well, while also having potentially up to liver failure. So it's extremely dangerous. I would say personally, if you have a pet, I would not get this plant. Admire it from afar. I would not recommend it because it is just too dangerous. And the next plant that I want to talk about is a plant that is coming up seasonally for us. It's going to be a really common plant that is going to be a very common house plant coming up in the next few months leading up to Christmas, is the amaryllis. Beautiful. Usually you buy a bulb and like there's these little vases that you set them on. They grow, they bloom. It happens sometime in late December through the rest of the winter if you bloom them indoors. They're absolutely beautiful, honest. They're stunning plants. They contain a toxin called lichen, and this toxin is found in the bulb of the plant, which if you're displaying them like they're traditionally displayed in a glass vase where they're sitting on top of the vase where just sort of the base of the bulb is setting in water so the roots can get water, that bulb is exposed and typically I would find that my cats would do this. They jump up on the table, they would try to take a nibble out of the plant. That's when they try to. I keep all my plants in totally different places because they just try to eat all my plants all the time. The lichen has really similar effects to the insoluble calcium oxalates, which we're going to talk about next. They affect the mouth, the digestive tract. They cause some swelling, some irritation, some pain. It's a very mild toxicity. The ASPCA does not list this as a cause of death, but just like so you are aware that could be why your pet is sick if they get sick after you bring home a plant like this. I would still take the dog to the vet or the pet to the vet because, always better safe than sorry. So now I want to tell you about insoluble calcium oxalates. These are so common. I found in my research so many plants contain these. I'm going to just kind of run through a list of them after I'm done explaining what they do. Basically, the pet bites into the leaf and these calcium oxalates they're like little crystals in the leaf, and when the pet bites into them, they can get released. The crystals can kind of like pierce the skin or the tissue membrane, and it'll cause irritation, inflammation, potentially some bleeding. The ASPCA mentioned very rarely that there could be some airway swelling, which is of course cause for major concern, but it seems to be very uncommon, and the pet would have to ingest a lot. So some plants that I have listed here that have insoluble calcium oxalates in them are pothos, our beautiful pothos. So yes, your super common pothos is slightly toxic, mildly toxic as the ASPCA defines it. The peace lily contains these. Caladiums contain these. There's a lot more. There's a lot more that contain these. I believe Dieffenbachia too. Let me double check. Is that on here? No. It's not. I think Dieffenbachia does. I'll look into it. The next toxin that I want to talk about is saponins. Sapoins. No. This toxin targets the digestive tract, causing vomiting, diarrhea. Some pets may vomit blood in extreme cases. This is another one that is like a mild case of toxicity. Also in quite a number of plants. So it's all about, just monitoring, and it's not always in the entirety of the plant. Like this is in Chlamycin. Those plants you could always find at the grocery store with the flowers on them. Little picture in right here. That's only in the rhizomes or the tubers. So your pet would have to get the plant out of the pot and start eating the roots. And that is how they would get that toxicity. If they just ate the leaves of the flowers, they wouldn't be exposed to that toxin. Aloes contain saponins, and that is in the pulp and the juice. And that's all I wrote down because I'm good at this. Dracaenas also contain saponins as well. So another mild toxicity. So we're back though. We're going to talk about the last toxin that I'm going to cover today, and that is glycide. So glycide is found in the desert rose. I didn't see it in anything else, but I will list that if I did. Glycide is extremely toxic. The entire plant is toxic, if I remember correctly. Now, from what I understand, I think what is most dangerous about this plant is that it has long-term effects. Side effects of ingesting this glycide is vomiting, diarrhea, anorexia, depression, irregular heartbeat, and potentially death. Anorexia and depression are things that don't just happen in a span of 15 minutes. Those are things that happen and they consume entire parts of your lives, entire days, weeks, months. So that is what makes me think that this particular chemical, if ingested, stays in your system for a very long time. It has really lasting effects on you. It's extremely dangerous. This is also toxic to humans, so it is not pet safe. It is not human safe to ingest. Not that most of us would eat our houseplants, but if you have children, that is also something to really consider. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, this one, even to get like the sap on your skin, can cause burning and stuff. So it's a very dangerous plant to have. My recommendation, if you have any of these plants that I listed, you need to make sure you keep them on a very high shelf, away from your pets, maybe in like a macrame hanger like this one. If you need to have these plants and you have pets and they're so toxic and your pets are always into your plants, you really need to consider your pet's safety. And I have a lot of shelves in my house. I have cabinets with grow lights in them to keep my pets out of my plants. And I think that's it for the video this week. Remember to give this video a like, give me a subscribe, and I'm going to see you next week. Bye.